Hello everybody, welcome back to another light novel review. Today I'm talking about volume number 5 in Jin's light novel series, Kagerou Daze. Now, in this volume, our main narrator is Shuya Kano. This is the boy that, of course, is able to make people see what he wants them to see. That can be everything from he could be crying, but he'll make people think that he's smiling, to even impersonating a cat, apparently. And his story starts just before he gets his powers. It follows through his sort of mid-childhood, his discovery of his ability, his meeting with Seto and Kido, and leads up eventually to the formation of the first Mekakushi Dan, and starts, and I will only say starts, to reveal at least a little bit more of the information that seems to be going on in this much bigger series or bigger story that Jin is trying to tell. Now, probably one of the biggest complaints, I guess you could say, about this series is that it really meanders. You can tell that there's a big idea here. You can tell that there's a story that Jin is trying to tell, but the book refuses to get right to the point. It goes in circles. The way that Jin writes, and I don't know if this is intentional, if it's amateurish, or if it's brilliance, it's hard to tell sometimes, but he plays with you in terms of the whole book is in first person. And in previous volumes, he's done similar things, and he does it again here, where he will disorient you by you not knowing who the person is who's speaking. And you won't realize it sometimes until you're 2 or 3 pages into the events where someone will finally call the narrator by their name. And at that point, you click in and go, oh, okay, that's who this is about. And in a way, I guess it could be frustrating, but sometimes, especially when I'm reading a whole bunch of light novels, it's kind of fun because suddenly when I know who's talking and I know the people that are involved in the situation, it's almost like it changes everything that I've just read, and suddenly it casts it in a whole new light. And as a reader, I find that kind of fun and a little refreshing. It's not so, the series is in no way blunt. The series is in no way straight ahead and really direct and to the point, and here's my story and I'm telling it just the way that it's got to be told. Instead, this series has chosen to focus on individual characters, individual moments that, as they start stacking up on top of each other one by one, it's starting to form the story, and it's starting to give us some of these ideas about just what the heck is going on. But I don't know that you'll be any really clearer by the time you finish this volume on the larger story than you were going into it. That said, I will give one more little criticism to the book, and then I will end on my higher notes. But my one little criticism about this series, and I believe I've said it before about some of his other narrators, but it's really, I think, a bit striking in this volume. With Kano, we are following him from him being a child to the present point where these books take place. And I'm not sure if you're meant, because it's first person, because it's told in first person, it feels a little disorienting at first that you're in the quote-unquote head of a child that's maybe 9 or 10 to begin with, but he talks and thinks the exact same way as the Kano who's in his late teens does. Now, this could be explained because the whole book could be just Kano telling his story. There's sort of that hint that that's what's going on, but again, it's a little nebulous. It's a little very free form and a little bit loose in terms of how you interpret exactly what's going on. And I'll admit that I'm not always the greatest at interpreting subtext and interpreting mysterious type things, probably because I just don't read as many books that are like that. So to me, it was a little bit disorienting. To me, I was kind of like, well, this kid is talking in the way that an adult would, and it just seemed a little odd. And the other thing is that because the progression of years go by, it's not always clear that the character is aging. Like a lot of the points, because his speech patterns pretty much stay the same throughout, it becomes kind of harder to say, oh, well, now he's in this grade or now he's this age, because the character seems pretty consistent all the way through, even though, like I said, it does cover quite a number of years in his growing up. The one thing that I will say I really liked about this book, and I guess it's weird to say that I liked it, but this book made me feel a little melancholy. Like I'm gonna admit it. It just gave me this sort of bluish feeling, and I think it's because this series has these people that have abilities, and abilities that many of them are kind of cool. I mean, we have Kano, of course, who can make himself appear to be whatever he wants. We have Seto, who can read thoughts to an extent. We have Kido, who can disappear and sort of vanish or become less noticeable. We have Momo, who can be completely noticed. I mean, some of these abilities are useful and interesting, and in just about any other series would probably be absolutely loved by their protagonists who own them. But in this series, they're a sense of pain and they're a source of alienation. And it's a very different take on people who have abilities. And in this volume, we start to get the impression that these abilities may even be putting these people in a great deal of danger that they have them. So it's just a very different take on the whole superpowered genre, the whole powered teenager genre. I mean, the other thing I think to it is that this series is very small and very slow moving. We don't have characters that are using these abilities to do these huge, grandiose actions. They're not fighting super criminals or trying to save the world or anything like that that's happened really up to this point. This volume is really about a couple of kids who, because of these abilities, find themselves alone and cling on to each other because they realize that only they can sort of understand what's going on. And it follows them through this progression of hopelessness, then this chance for hope, and then again loss. And it really is a very different reading experience. And that's, like I said, not even taking into account how it's written, which is in and of itself at times, I think, intentionally disorienting, but in a way makes it, I think, a little bit more fun than if the book was just straight ahead the way a lot of other light novels are. So Kagerou Daze, I know, is probably going to be one of those volumes, well, not volume, series in general, that I think is going to be a challenge for some people. And for others, I think it's going to be one of those series that they think is really cool and very different and that engages them. And so I can see this being a really polarizing series. I haven't seen a huge fan base community come around this volume. Now, admittedly, I don't go as many places where I may find fans of this series, but because each element of this series is different, like I believe the manga tells a different story, even though it used the same characters. The anime told a different story, even though it uses the same characters. Even the sort of Vocaloid songs that were meant to tell sort of a story, I think tells a slightly different story than this one. So Kagerou Project in general, if you find fans of the anime, it doesn't mean that they're fans of the light novel. It doesn't mean that they're fans of the manga, and all of that is vice versa. So a really divisive series, I can totally understand why that would be. I can understand why some people may not enjoy the books and may find the writing a bit frustrating, especially now that we're into the 5th volume. And as far as I know, the 7th volume of this series was only released in Japan in the summer. I have yet to see anything about an 8th volume. So it seems like there's so much more story yet to tell and not a lot of time left to tell it. So we'll see how it progresses from here. I know I'm kind of going all over the place, but really that's kind of how this series is, and it's kind of how this book makes me feel when I read it. So those are my thoughts on volume number 5 of Kagerou Daze. For my next review, I am actually going to be doing one that has been kicking around my shelf for a long time, and that's going to be A Certain Magical Index volume number 1. Bought this a while back, probably I guess when it actually first came out. Just could not get into it because I'd seen the anime pretty recent to this, but it's been at least a year and a half, I think, since that. So hopefully I'll be able to see if I can get back into this and give a honest review. So that'll be my next video. So if you're new to the channel, don't forget to click subscribe so you can keep up with all my future light novel reviews. I've got links to my old reviews, and I don't just read books, I like to write them as well. I have links there as well. So again, thank you very much for watching the video. I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Till then, bye-bye for now.